Joining me right now, the author of a really interesting and fascinating book, particularly if you're a baseball fan, but you don't have to be to enjoy this. It's called Munson, The Life and Death of a Yankee Captain, commemorating the 30th anniversary of Thurman Munson's untimely death back in 1979. We're joined by the former Yankees PR director and co-author of Thurman Munson's original autobiography and author of this particular book called Munson, Marty Appel, joining us today. How are you, Marty?
I'm great, thank you. And really, it is unusual that the same author revisits the same subject some 30 years apart. But I did his autobiography with him back then, and here I am back again with the full-blown biography version.
I know you talk about it in the book, kind of getting with him back in the 70s when he joined the team, and I grew up in New York and was a big Yankee fan, of course, still am, and a Munson fan, but he was difficult to deal with, at least from the press perspective. So I know you had a little challenge at that particular point, didn't you, getting him to do the book with you?
Well, but that's really why I wound up doing the book, is because he wasn't on good terms with any members of the New York media at all, and I had been the Yankees PR guy, so that was sort of like halfway between being media and not. And it fell to me then, the assignment to do the autobiography, which he only wanted to talk about his on-the-field exploits and, the march of the Yankees back to the World Series. So people would compliment me over the years about it being a good book, but I knew in my heart there was a lot more to his story.
Those were interesting and strange years, weren't they? Not only the championship years of the late 70s, but those leading up to it. A lot of turmoil, of course. Steinbrenner came in, bought the team in the early 70s, and of course, CBS, when they owned it, kind of let it fall apart. So you had a lot of work to do, but those must have been fun years for you. I guess they were fun. Maybe not. Tell us.
Oh, yeah, they absolutely were fun. And, Thurman was a key building block towards restoring the team to greatness. And George Steinbrenner buying the team in 73 was very important because he had a lot more money that he was willing to spend on the team than CBS did. And sure enough, by 76, we were back in the World Series, in no small measure due to Munson winning the MVP award and having been named captain that same year, which I think was not a coincidence.
Yeah, the only other captain prior to that point was the great Lou Gehrig, right? And then after that, they said they would never name another captain. So that was a little unusual, even though Munson was the heart of the team at that point, to name him a captain, wasn't it?
It's a good story because when Lou Gehrig died of ALS in 1941, Joe McCarthy, his manager, had said, "There'll never be another captain of the Yankees. The position ends with Lou Gehrig." So all those years go by, and now George Steinbrenner owns the team, and he comes from like a football mentality background, and he said, "I think, sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't, but I think it'd be good to have a captain." And I was the guy who was the PR director who remembered what McCarthy had said, so I brought it up, and to his credit, Mr. Steinbrenner said, "Well, if Joe McCarthy knew Thurman Munson, he'd know this was the right guy." And it was a brilliant thing to say, and it turned out to be correct.
Talking with Marty Appel, author of Munson, The Life and Death of a Yankee Captain. And I know you tell some great stories in the book about some of those meetings with George Steinbrenner, and not always easy to get through, but 99% of the time, I guess he was right, wasn't he, what he wanted to do. Maybe he did it in a way that maybe wasn't easy to hear, but he was pretty decisive back then, wasn't he?
Well, one of the more interesting portions of the book is after George Steinbrenner receives the horrible phone call from the Canton airport that Thurman had been killed in the plane crash. I was able to recreate the scene in his office as he brings in his senior staff and goes into action, the boss in high gear at the top of his game. You do this, you do that. We're going to have black armbands on the sleeves. We're going to bring up this guy from the minor leagues. We're going to put this on the scoreboard. We're going to retire his number. You guys fly out to Canton and do whatever's necessary. He was, at his best, and it's really an interesting look at him.
You not only talk about that sad day, we'll get to that in a minute, but, his career leading up to that, he was a great athlete growing up in Ohio. I wasn't aware of this. He was how good in other sports he was. You talked about his great athletic ability back then as a kid, and kind of in his mind, I guess he wasn't blessed with the greatest body in the world, but he was a pretty good athlete, wasn't he? All-around athlete.
Well, his teammates would call him Squatty Body, and
yeah.
He certainly didn't look like Michael Phelps. But he was one of the great athletes. It all came so naturally to him. not only basketball, football, and baseball, which he excelled in high school, but he would try anything once and then beat everybody at it, whether it was bowling or pool or golf or handball. He'd try it one time, master it, and then never lose. He was unbelievable.